Hello, my name is Jim. This is my podcast, Bloody Vegans. You're very welcome to it. Each week I'll be travelling ever deeper into the world of veganism, discovering along the way a multitude of viewpoints from the political and ethical to the practical. I'll be doing this through a series of conversations, each aiming to further illuminate my understanding and hopefully yours of all things plant-centric. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with Tina Newman, the author and self-publisher, in fact, of an incredible vegan children's book, Vivi the Supervegan. There are so few vegan children's books out there, and as a parent, I truly appreciate what Tina's done with this. The conversation was fantastic. I really enjoyed speaking with Tina, and we covered a whole range of parenting subjects, but also we went further. So please enjoy. This is me and Tina Newman. Thank you so much for your time.
That's okay.
Appreciate it. It sounds like you're super busy, not only promoting a book, but trying to organise 2 kids.
Oh, yeah. And my little dog, bless him.
And a little dog as well.
Yeah. Do you have I couldn't remember. Did you say you have a child or?
I've got a little boy called Arthur who's 18 months old. He's in nursery right now. So he's having a lovely old time. But he's a handful, so I can't imagine 2 and a dog and writing a book.
It has definitely been a handful, but I've got 20 months between my girls as well, so they're quite close in age. So it is definitely keeps you on my toes.
Yeah. Yes. How old are your 2?
So mine are 5 and 3. My littlest is going to be 4 on New Year's Day. So yeah,
bless.
They're still little, but I have a morning free, so it's nice to get a few things done.
Yeah, so you'll have 2 at school fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, my youngest is at preschool 2.5 days out of the week, so I try and get as much as I can done on those days, and then obviously, yeah, she'll be going up, and then I'll have the 5 days, so I can be as crazy busy as I can then.
Sounds fun. So Tina, when did you go vegan? What sort of led you into that world? So I was vegetarian for 21 years before, and completely unaware of the dairy and the eggs, and I feel really stupid now, like majorly stupid, but yeah.
They keep everything so well hidden. And because I went vegetarian as a child at 11, obviously social media wasn't a thing then. So I just kind of got on with my life thinking that I wasn't contributing to the suffering of animals anymore. And then it was 2 years ago that I went vegan. And I'd literally seen a picture on Facebook of a mother cow and then a calf. And I was just having to click on it. It wasn't anything graphic or anything. It was just the sadness in both of their eyes. And I thought, I wonder what this is. And it took me to a James Aspey video.
Right.
And then that obviously woke me up big time. And I went vegan overnight.
Yeah. So going right back, so I'm intrigued as an 11-year-old. So you did you just make the connection where your food was coming from and I don't want to be part of this? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I was vegetarian for the first year of my life. My mum told me, and then so I don't know if that could have had any kind of bearing on my huge animal lover childhood, but I was a massive animal lover as a child and still am. So then we went on a family holiday to Norfolk, and we went to Hillside Animal Sanctuary.
Okay.
Because I can't really remember, I just remember being extremely upset. They've obviously got the signs and information around the sanctuary, connecting obviously what's happened and why the animals are there. And I think I obviously just put 2 and 2 together. And then I spoke to my mum and dad. My mum was a vegetarian anyway.
Oh, okay.
But I remember walking down the street once. I used to live in London. And I remember seeing some animal activists, and they obviously had some placards with some images on, and I was devastated. It really, really upset me, and it was kind of from then on, really.
Right. So I suppose helpful when you've got a mum who's kind of vegetarian. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
very much so.
And yeah, like you, I felt exactly the same about that idea of when I found out about the egg and dairy industry, kind of thinking, how did I not know about this? Like this arguably is worse. And yet,
I know.
And yet it's not, that information is not publicly available.
I know. You feel really, I mean, I felt deeply ashamed. I still do, and really upset about it all. Especially I was breastfeeding my own children at the time.
Right. Okay. Wow.
It hit me hard. And you start thinking, how could I have not known that, obviously cows are mammals. To produce milk, they have to be pregnant, and it just starts unlocking everything. And, you feel really silly, but when you know better, you do better. And I feel that's what I'm trying to do through everything now. And there's no point beating yourself up because they keep everything so hidden from everybody, don't they?
Yeah. I think so. Absolutely. There's definitely like an idyllic image that's kind of that's put out there of kind of almost like it's like surplus and willfully given to us. And and when you find that out, it kind of it's like you say, it's devastating, and you do feel that kind of sense of shame. So you mentioned at this point, like you're a mum, and you're kind of like, connecting with particularly like the, things like you mentioned, the dairy industry, etc. You're connecting with the cruelty of that, like on a kind of personal level. At what point did that kind of move into what I would consider like a form of activism in kind of like becoming a children's author?
So I didn't hang about. I don't think I'm your average vegan. I went vegan in the September, and I looked straight away for different activism things that I could get involved in. So I went and did something called an Earthlings experience in Bury St Edmunds about 2 weeks after I went vegan. I guess it was my way of feeling like I needed to try and give back and try and help other people, know the truth and everything. So I got involved in lots of different activism events over the past 2 years. But I then kind of met the 4 friends who've become like my support with my little tribe really in Suffolk, all mothers, all with children of similar ages. And I guess my kind of activism, but just the different ways that I would try and be involved to help other people, see the truth and the facts and reality of everything. It kind of evolved more into parents and mothers, and we set something up called Vegan Mamas, which is a local group for anybody who is either interested in veganism or who is vegan or who's vegetarian. But because we're in a very rural farming community, you can feel quite isolated if you suddenly gone vegan. So I was very blessed to bump into these women, and we all had the same passion and desire to set something up. So that kind of started me on my journey of looking into the different ways I could do my activism more around my everyday life, if that makes sense, where I'm at, because I was trying to travel to London and get involved in different events, and that's very difficult when you've got 2 young children, and it's not always doable. So that kind of put me on my journey, really.
Yeah, and were you just fortunate to have come across other kind of vegan mums in that, or did you kind of actively seek them out? Was it through activism that you found them?
It was actually, and I do feel really lucky. I know not everybody is fortunate enough to have made friends with people not only who are in the same boat as them, but who have exactly the same kind of situation. But I did meet a couple of them at. It was a Ditch Dairy event, so it was an activism event, and then a couple of the others at a coffee morning. So then that's gone from the 5 of us to we put on events now, and we have about like 35 to 40 people turn up.
Oh wow! Wow.
So they featured us in our local paper, which I think probably annoyed the local community because obviously we're not very liked here.
Well, I was gonna ask that. So you mentioned like it being a real kind of rural community. I think it's kind of Suffolk, Norfolk, generally kind of known for their kind of agriculture. Like, so do you feel like they're kind of like ostracized kind of group, or how well are you received out there?
Well, I mean, we're all very friendly mums, and we know we weren't always vegan, so that is what we always try and remember. And I think you can obviously, when you first go vegan, you're so horrified by everything. You want to tell everybody, and
absolutely,
you forget that the best way to educate people is to remember how you were educated yourself. So I think the main thing with all of us is to be really kind and patient, and so people can't really get annoyed when you're like that. They know
no.
They know what we're about, but as long as you're always just staying true to yourself, then I'm sure it rattles people. It is gonna, isn't it? But we're not gonna give up.
No, absolutely. And how about like things like, I've encountered a little bit of this myself, but the kind of like the school gates kind of thing, it's nursery gates for me right now, but the kind of the nursery kind of other parents that you come across, and perhaps even the institutions themselves, the nurseries and schools, what kind of experiences have you had in that space?
So I've obviously got one in preschool and one in primary school at the minute. And I tend to wear, well, not all the time, but I've got a couple of jumpers they might have a message on, and
right.
that might rattle people. They're never a horrible message. It just says things like vegans aren't crazy, we're just from the future, just silly little things. Just something to get people thinking. I've got the Earthling Ed one, which says stand up for something, speak up for something, vegan for everything. So they're just little messages. But from that, a couple of mums have come over and said, oh, I like your jumper, and have started a conversation, and 2 of them ended up doing Veganuary.
Oh, wow.
So cool. Because of that, there are things happening. But I do know that I think I've probably been unfollowed by a few parents on social media and things, because that's going to happen. And
of course,
with my daughter's school, I know you probably don't have to deal with this at the minute at nursery, although it'll be interesting to see about your food choices and stuff. But in year 1, in reception and year 1 and 2, I think, they get free school dinners.
Right.
So when mine were at preschool, I just did a packed lunch. But when my eldest Lyla started school, I obviously wanted to see what was on the menu for her, and there wasn't any vegan options. So I spoke to the chef, and I went to the catering company, and as a result, our school was the first school in Suffolk to roll out a vegan menu.
Oh, wow.
So they've been really amazing and really accommodating for that side of things as well.
Yeah.
And so we've had a really positive experience. I know that's not the same for everybody, unfortunately, but what about with you at nursery?
Yes, it's sort of similar, to be fair. Like, I think our little boy Arthur was the first vegan kid in the nursery. It's a relatively new nursery. There's lots of kids with various intolerances and so on and so forth, and I think they've kind of like, I suppose nursery is a bit difficult in a way, different in a way, like, because as you know, like you're paying them. There's an element of like they feel a bit more obliged maybe well, that's my perception. I've obviously not had
I see what you mean.
Not had a primary school experience just yet. I hope I have one like yours. Sounds super positive, but they were quite receptive and have worked with us on kind of like what he can and can't eat. They're obviously it takes them a bit of time to understand exactly what is vegan and what isn't. And there's been a few like I guess like pivotal moments where we can see that they're sort of they've suddenly cottoned on to, well, if we give a vegan option, all the kids can eat it.
I know. It's so frustrating, isn't it? Because I tried to say that to our chef, and she was like, I get it. I completely get it, Tina. I agree with you, but we can't go. The catering company obviously provides everything. I was like, it save you guys so much money, and everyone can eat it then, and it covers everything. And but people, the world's changing. People are changing. They're seeing this now, and hopefully my 2 won't stay the only vegans of the school for much longer.
Hopefully not. No, I'm sure they won't. And the little one who's in primary school, like, how's that been in terms of like other kids? Are they aware of a difference? Does like the kind of birthday party scenario, like how does that play out for you?
Well, she's amazing. She's 5. She's going to be 6 in April, but she's a very, very deep thinking child. She's like an old soul, bless her. She's very
Right.
aware of everything, and she's very proud of her way of life, and she's very passionate. And so she speaks to her friends, and I'm friends with the parents and stuff, and they come back and they say, so and so was talking to Lyla, and she wants to try the vegan food tomorrow, and Lyla will kind of educate them on stuff. And she hasn't had a problem at all. And at parties, I'll either speak to the venue and find out if they're going to provide anything. If not, I will take Lyla the plant-based alternatives or whatever the other children are having, whether that's hot dogs or nuggets or burgers. I'll take the same, but I'll make it look 10 times better. And I'll make her food look really amazing and colourful, and all the kids are always looking at it like, huh? So she hasn't had, there's been nothing so far that has made her feel like the odd one out. She seems to be very proud to be different, and her friends are all really intrigued, and a lot of the time are a little bit confused because they'll give out Haribo sweets on birthdays, and Lyla will usually have Skittles or Love Hearts or something else, and they'll ask her questions, and they'll say, but there's no meat in these, and she'll say, no, but it's got gelatine, and they'll say, what's that? And she'll say, well, that's crushed animal bones. And they'll go, oh no, it's not, I'm not eating that, because they're really confused, because of course their parents haven't said that, or if they've gone back and said, Mummy, am I eating crushed animal bones? They might say, oh no, you're not, and kind of shrug it off. So she's a voice, bless her. She's making ripples.
Oh, sounds like she's her own activist. I love it.
Yeah, she is.
Raised her well, clearly. That's fantastic. And it's interesting, that point though. I think there's that, like, the only way that that kids don't question it is because of the disassociation we kind of create for them. Like if you told a child you're eating crushed cow bones, funny enough, they don't really want to be part of that themselves. I think kids are innately kind of kind, particularly towards animals. So
they really are. That was like my main thing, is like when people ask about or they'll say, oh, I don't know if you've had this yet, how long have you been vegan? I haven't even asked you that, sorry.
No, that's fine. 2.5 years, so just like about a year before Arthur was born. Watched Cowspiracy. My wife was on she was at work at the time. I was day off. She came home, and I think I must have looked like shell shocked, sort of sat on the sofa like, you need to sit down and you need to watch this. Definitely. So we did, and then 3 or 4 documentaries later, Forks Over Knives, etc., and Dominion and Earthlings, and before you know it, you're like, what on earth were we doing? And it was for us, it was like the next day. That's the journey for us, about 2.5 years, but not as long a journey as you in terms of like the vegetarianism and then the transition.
But do you find people still say, I mean, I don't know how they are towards you with Arthur, but have you had any negative comments saying, oh, it's not fair, you're forcing it on your child, or anything like that?
It's interesting. So I would say we haven't had anything directly, because I don't think people, especially in today's society, people are they're confrontational online. But
yes.
They're probably less confrontational face to face, but probably more actually friends and family with kind of not intentional judgment, but you can tell there's like an element of, definitely, are you sure that you're not causing irreparable damage to this beautiful little boy? And I'm kind of like, yep, I'm really sure
I know.
not.
I know. And that's the thing, because, if you told children, of course, they wouldn't choose to eat the animals they love. As you say, their children are innately, they're compassionate, they come into the world, they love animals, and it's almost like we've had that pushed out of us by our upbringing in society and everything, and then we straight away start doing it to our children, and you kind of automatically want to suppress that natural inbuilt compassion towards animals, and then you hide it from them, don't you? And then you go vegan and your eyes are open, and that's why I I mean, nobody has ever got upset or angry or anything to do with anything Lyla has said at school, because she's only stating the truth, and she's doing it, in an innocent place. It's coming from a place of love. So, and if anybody was funny about it, then unfortunately she's only saying what the children are eating, isn't she? So if a parent did say, well, I don't like the fact that Lyla's saying that gelatin is crushed animal bones, well, I'd have to say, well, it is that, isn't it? Like,
exactly.
People aren't choosing to tell their children that. Our children do know the truth, and we don't want them to feel burdened that they know everything, because it's really hard. And we walk to school and the big trucks go by full of pigs and full of chickens, and they're on the way to the slaughterhouse. And living where we do, you have it in your face day in, day out. And Lyla will be, she'll literally walk into school and she's just seen 2 trucks go by full of animals, and the other children will be pointing and going, oh, look, and she'll be looking up at me really sad, and because she knows where they're going and she knows what's going to happen. And that's sad reality, I think, for vegan children. It's a burden that they've got now. They know they know the truth, and they know what's happening in the world, and it's trying to shelter them from it, I guess, but to keep them positive through it and show them the ways that we can fight to make a change. And I hope the girls see that with me, and putting it into a positive way through the book and through other things, because otherwise it's a really sad world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That disassociation bit is so deep that, like you say, like when a truck full of pigs goes to a slaughterhouse, that kids don't associate that with the end result, and it is a massive burden for a child who does know what's going to happen to those animals. And thinking about your kind of book, and like I'm going through obviously the journey of like Arthur's starting to get interested in aspects of media, so he's starting to watch like TV shows and so on, and like read books and things like that. And like even so far as like, I mean, he loves like things like Postman Pat, for example. And I'm often thinking with like Alf the farmer, like he's a dairy farmer, he's got 2 cows, and we don't see any calves, and so on and so forth.
I know.
And I'm like, I've got all this like in my head, like as we're watching it.
Yeah.
At the moment, obviously, he's far too young to even know what's going on. Like he just thinks he drinks milk or whatever, and it's oat milk or but yeah, that disassociation starts that young.
It does, and it's so subtle, and it's in every program and everything you hear. And you're right, every kids program is geared towards the other way of life, and it's horrible, because when we were growing up, I wouldn't have even thought about it, and that's obviously my worry for my 2. I don't want them to think, even toys that you get, like everything is obviously, it's either like farms or books about zoos, and even the classic one, the open the flap book about a zoo, and you send the animal back, and everything is geared towards animal exploitation. It's nuts. It's completely nuts. So they're coming into a world where they're going to have to obviously live with that. But that's why I'm so passionate about putting the other side out there, and promoting a compassionate lifestyle that kids can then look at and think, that is normal to feel compassionate towards animals and not want to harm them and see them in, behind bars and things like that. So I hope more and more books come out, and even nursery rhymes. My 5-year-old tells my 3-year-old off when she comes back singing Bar Bar Black Sheep or Old MacDonald Has a Farm. She's changed the words for her, bless her. So they've made them like sanctuary based.
Yeah. Like we've done exactly the same thing with Arthur, and we're like, this doesn't quite scan Old MacDonald Has a Sanctuary, but at the same time, like, I'm not saying he's got a farm.
I know. Although one of my friends had a good idea, and she changed it to, so he does have a farm, but on his farm he grows apples, and then it was brilliant. She's changed like all of the things. So yeah, but it just shows how subtle it is, isn't it? And it does start so young.
Yeah, Old MacDonald's into veganic agriculture.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with that?
That's much better. I love that. So that's why I'm so kind of fascinated, particularly the journey that sort of I'm on, you're on as a parent in your book. Like, it feels to me from what I've seen, and like, every time we walk past the bookshop, we go in it, we're really keen that Arthur like has lots of books around him growing up, and we found very little in the way of books that sort of talk about kind of animals in a positive way that isn't sort of exploiting them or creating that disassociation. So we're super excited by your book. So where was the kind of inception of it? When did it come about?
So I wrote it. It all came about very quickly, actually. I wrote it last year, and then I spoke to my cousin who works for a publishing company in London, and I asked her for advice about whether I should go down the publishing route or the self-publishing route. And she kind of gave me the pros and cons for both. And in the end, I thought I know it's hard work, and we obviously had to front the money up ourselves. But I thought I was going to go for it with the self-publishing. So everything, the power was in my hands with the time element. And obviously I had to get my illustrator and everything. So yeah, it all kind of came about quite quickly, and obviously launched it in August. But it basically stemmed from exactly what you've just said. We went vegan. I straight away was looking through all of our books and thinking, gosh, like these are all promoting this way of life that we're basically turning our back on. And then I went to look for books, and I bought a couple of Ruby Roth's books. I don't know if you've come across them, but
no, they've got actually.
They're wonderful. They're for an older audience, but there's one called That's Why We Don't Eat Animals, and V is for vegan. And so I bought them, but my girls were obviously only 1 and 3 at the time.
Yeah.
The illustrations are the book is fantastic, but they're much more educational, and the pictures are very sad because it shows the animals in their natural habitat and then the animals in the factory farms. So it's quite a dark look at it. It's telling the truth, but so I was then trying to search for these vegan books, which I thought would be out there, and struggled to find anything, especially a story, and one that would still have the magic of a children's story to it, and the fun element of mischief, but still with the vegan message. I couldn't find it, so I wrote one.
And how have your toughest critics, your 2 kids, responded to it?
I think they're fed up of it now, to be honest.
Are they like, Mum, can you write another one?
Yeah, they're wonderful, and Lyla took it into her show and tell, bless her, and she was all very excited. And when my youngest walks into our little stock room in the house, she shouts, "Vivi the Supervegan!" And they're my proudest little fans. They've been wonderful. I think the toughest the critics will be the people that I'm surrounded by in our village. And I had an interview with BBC Radio Suffolk, which is our local radio station. Sure. And she went down. Yeah, she went for it.
Oh, did she? Did she go down there? Why are you forcing this on your children?
Basically, exactly that. And she used the words emotional blackmailing and everything. And I just simply explained very politely that obviously I'm only telling the truth, and even in my book I'm not saying anything apart from the truth, and it's obviously in a childlike way, but I would actually say that everything that we do, if you're not vegan, is obviously blackmailing, and it's hiding the truth from children. And if they knew the truth, they're going to choose a vegan lifestyle, because it comes back to that famous quote: if you put a toddler in a room with a bunny or an apple, which one are they going to play with, which one are they going to eat? And she didn't really know what to say back to that. So I know she was obviously I think they're from quite a farming family anyway, the presenter, so she obviously had an agenda and an opinion before she invited me on. But I know that that's obviously what people think, because they're blinded by the conditioning. I get it. I was there even as a vegetarian. I used to say, oh no, vegans are extreme. I get it. So you can never really get angry because people are only reacting from that place of defense, aren't they? And that unsure, and they're being challenged on something that they hold so dear. So yeah, apart from that, and to be honest, I think that's probably the only, I wouldn't even say negative, like challenging thing I've had. Apart from that, it's been received so positively, and people are so pleased that there's a book now which is positive for their children and a good role model for them.
Yeah, I bet, because like that, the story you told there about so it's buying some other books, they're being a little bit older and almost a little bit, not that you want to shield them from the harrowing bit, but at a certain age you think, are they ready quite emotionally to deal with this message? And I've had a very similar experience recently with, I bought this, it's a wonderful little book, beautifully illustrated little book about orangutans from the WWF. It's not particularly about veganism necessarily, it's more about palm oil, and it's harrowing. It's like quite upsetting to see this like destruction caused, and yeah, like I love the idea of having, just like we were afforded the opportunity to have beautiful, positive stories that create, great positive behaviors in culture, in our culture, like which is what I suppose most omnivorous kids get to kind of enjoy.
I know, and vegan children shouldn't have that taken away from them, and especially in schools and preschools and nurseries, all the books are they're quite old-fashioned and outdated. And even we were given as a present a book of Topsy and Tim at the farm, and to give it its dues, it was talking that it was a dairy farm, and that Topsy and Tim came across a calf who was on their own and crying, so it was actually kind of speaking about the reality. But if these are the kind of books that are the only books that are in these school settings and education settings, then where's the counter argument? Where's books promoting compassion and veganism? And at the minute, it's not very inclusive. So I'm on a mission to try and get my book in the early year settings and primary school, so kids can feel included, because it can be really isolating if that's all they're hearing and their lifestyle isn't being affirmed, it's not being supported. So
no,
that's the mission at the minute.
And I think that's a incredibly worthy mission. When I think about like our individual journeys as kind of adults into veganism, like you said, I think we all go through that. You go through the incredibly kind of I use that word shameful that you used earlier, like that, those sense of those emotions, the guilt, etc., the realization, then the kind of like, right, I need to tell everybody about this with a certain degree of like passion. They really need to understand what I've seen. But like alongside all of that, you discover, and I'm doing it actually through this podcast, you discover a community that is full of joy and love and fun. And it's not all about whilst we all have the vision of like this, a vegan world, and we want to stop the suffering of animals and protect our environment, we are also joyful people.
Exactly. And it's staying positive in a cruel world, isn't it? It's definitely. I think that's wonderful.
Children. Yeah, particularly for children. I think that like they shouldn't be robbed of that, like you say.
No.
That mission in terms of like getting that into almost like the school curriculum. How have you gone with that so far? Have you felt like institutionally? I'm thinking back to that you mentioned there that interview with the BBC. There couldn't be a bigger sort of institution, if you like.
Yeah. I know.
And I sort of, maybe naively, but I kind of associate the sort of school system as a branch of a similar institution.
Yeah.
So how are you finding that?
Well, to be fair, we've only just we've been working with someone called Laura Shepner, who is a wonderful lady. She has got something called Primary Vegetation. And she is the UK's first vegan consultant, and she basically goes into schools. They invite her in, and she helps the schools become more vegan inclusive for their pupils. So she's amazing, and she helped us draft a letter up. to send out to the schools. So at the minute, so basically me and my husband are writing down all of the schools in the UK, and we found out that there are 40,000 primary schools alone, and that's obviously without all of the preschools and nurseries on top. So it's gonna be quite a lengthy process, but all we can do is contact them, and I guess it will depend on how open-minded the head teacher is. And Laura's helped us draft this letter, really well. So we're not coming in aggressive or judgmental at all. We're just trying to put that alternative book and resource there to highlight that Ofsted and the early years learning goals all speak about having this understanding the world around you criteria,
right?
And that at the minute, if they're only offering these resources through books and songs and everything, and it's only offering that the non-vegan way of life, and they don't have anything that is there for the vegan children, and that is teaching the vegan child's peers about their way of life. So it's just offering it in that way, and hopefully a lot of these schools on their websites have inclusivity at the top of their schools. So it's just trying to highlight that at the minute the schools aren't vegan inclusive. So if they would like my book as a resource, then I'd be more than happy to arrange that and come and do readings and so on. So we'll have to see really what comes from it.
Yeah, like you say, I think there's a degree of autonomy to some extent with schools, from what I can see. So like I was speaking with a lady called Sarah Zanelli, who runs a marketing company, and they run events. It's called Sparkle Media Events, Sparkle Vegan Events, I should say. And alongside that, she kind of goes to schools and talks on behalf of Animal Aid.
Amazing.
And similarly, I was kind of like intrigued as to how do you surely the schools are all going to go, nope, that's we don't do that. We're definitely not talking to kids about that. And she said, like, I was surprisingly like, yeah, some head teachers and some teachers, if there's a vegan teacher or somebody who's kind of like passionate about the inclusivity message, genuinely, then they're quite keen. So yeah, let's hope that there's lots of those people around who really want to be that inclusive.
I do hope so. In fact, 3 of my friends in my vegan mama and another friend of mine, they all do educational talks with Animal Aid as well. I think it's such a fantastic thing to do. And this book, it's not showing anything graphic, and it's obviously just it's still a lovely story for children, and children love animals, so it's for non-vegan children and vegan children. So I really want it to empower vegan kids, but I also want it to educate non-vegan children. And one lady got in touch with me and said that she'd bought the book for her vegan children, but her non-vegan cousins were around, and her children were reading the book, and straight away the non-vegan children were obviously asking questions and saying but why is she sad, and what's going on about the pig, and asking questions, and where was the pig going, and just asking things. So it's to get them thinking. And she said that she was very happy to step back and let her vegan children do the educating. So her whoever it was, her brother or sister, couldn't then get angry, because that's a kid's automatic. They have the right to question, don't they? They have.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't really give them credit, children, for their intelligence and their compassion. So we'll see. I hope the schools will be positive and we can get that in there, because the world is changing, and I do really believe that they need to offer that for children.
Yeah, and let's face it, we're talking one book at the moment, or amongst a sea of information to the contrary. So I think the least that schools can do is offer something. Like I'd love to see it being far more diverse than that. So I think the least they could do is like accept your book in as a starter for 10. So. Yeah, let's hope so. I'll certainly be on your side with that one.
Oh, bless you. I'll keep you posted anyway.
Yeah, do. So I have one sort of final big question, and it sort of zooms out a little bit, I suppose. But I've been asking lots of different people this as I've gone through this kind of journey. To give you the context, like prior to doing the podcast, I had probably, or to go back a little further, I'd probably met about sort of 2 other vegans, one of them being my wife and one being my son, up until I volunteered for Reading Vegan Festival.
Okay.
And there I met a whole bunch of like speakers who were doing like talks there, and just couldn't believe the many and varied viewpoints. And so that led to me wanting to have these conversations, because I thought there's so many people out there that have like completely different perspectives, often, you know, obviously the same end point, that we all want to get to a kind of vegan world. And so that's kind of the crux of my question is like, how optimistic do you feel about that kind of end mission, if you like, that goal to get to a vegan world?
Well, I believe it's going to happen. It'd be amazing if it happened in our lifetime, but I can't see that happening. Not really, even with my girls, but maybe their grandchildren. And I know it's going to happen. It has to happen. Obviously, things aren't sustainable from an environmental point of view, the way things are at the minute. And obviously, it can't come soon enough in my eyes at all. I'm vegan for the animals. That's why I went vegan, and obviously learned more about the environmental side, and obviously the health, which is there's just a bonus for me. Ultimately, for me, I just want to see the end of animal exploitation in all forms, and as a result of that, then humans will be healthier and the planet will be better, and it's just a win-win-win all round. So I do believe it will become a vegan world, or at least the majority. There'll be a tipping point. I don't know when that will be. Sometimes you can be on social media and you can feel that it's coming very, very soon, because I think obviously through the algorithms on Facebook and other things, you obviously you're seeing a lot of like-minded people's posts. So I know a lot of vegan activists, and you'll be seeing things and hearing stuff and conversations, and the kind of the positive side, and things that are plant-based news are posting, and you can think, wow, this is incredible. And then I'll step outside my door and I'll go down to school and realize that I'm the only person who feels like this. Or there may be a few other mothers now who have got to know me and have made changes, which is incredible. And that, I think, they're the things that you hold on to, because you can start thinking, oh gosh, when's this going to happen? And will it ever happen? And it could become a bit doom and gloomy. And what I try and hold on to is the fact that the power of the ripple effect. So, if I hadn't have watched that James Aspey video, then I wouldn't have met the other mums, and then we wouldn't have started up this group, and then all of those people wouldn't have come along, and then I wouldn't have written the book, which has gone out to all of these children and families. It's just the power of the ripple effect that don't ever stop believing and talking to people, because you just don't know what will happen, and the kind of people that you then speak to, especially if they become passionate and vocal, it's so powerful. And I really believe that one day the world will look very, very different, and it would be amazing if we could see it, but I'm not sure.
I think that's a balanced and pragmatic view, but ultimately like full of optimism, and that, I think
completely. I'm realistic. I think it's important to obviously be realistic and say, well, the world is not going to go vegan overnight. It just isn't. I think, unfortunately, as much as we love the older generation for so many amazing, incredible things they've done, Remembrance Sunday's just gone, and I'm always in tears thinking about, what our grandparents and their generation did for, our today. And there's so many amazing, incredible things, but the deep conditioning obviously goes with that generation, and then the generation down, and then even our generation, and it's the millennials driving this movement forward with veganism that unfortunately I think a few of our generations are going to have to pass on until that tipping point really does happen. And we saw it with smoking, didn't we? Like you've only got to look at that and think, as a child, you'd go to shopping centres, you'd go to restaurants, you'd go to well, not as a child, I was going to say nightclubs, but obviously once you got to teenagers, smoking was everywhere. And if anybody had said, look, this is going to be banned and everybody's going to end up kind of looking at people when they're smoking, being like, well, why are you doing that? Like, nobody really would have believed that. But you only have to look around now and see, okay, well, that's changed. And the tobacco industry was the same kind of thing in the way that, you know, they paid doctors to promote it. And it was very corrupt in the same way that the animal agriculture industry do everything. And that just shows that once there is that tipping point and people wake up to the truth, and we have the power of social media, and the more people that speak up against these industries and the more people that find their voice in whatever way that is, whatever way they feel comfortable, the quicker it's going to happen. So yeah, I'm positive, and I'm going to do everything I can in my lifetime and teach my children to do the same, and be a positive warrior to bring it about quickly.
I love that. And you're definitely bringing up two wonderful activists, I think, to support the cause further.
Yeah.
So where can we go about finding Vivi the Supervegan if we want to pick up a copy?
So it's available directly from my website, which is www.vivithesupervegan.co.uk. We've just launched on Amazon last week as well. So it's available through either of those. And hopefully 2020, you'll be seeing the second edition to the series as well.
Oh, wonderful. So there's more in the works.
There is indeed.
Excellent. Great news. Well, we'll look out for that. And where can we look out for stuff like that? Social media, is that a good place to find you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram, and I've got a page on Facebook as well. So it's just at Vivi the Supervegan on both of those.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tina. I know how busy you are self-promoting this book. It's a truly exceptional piece of work. So thank you so much for writing it. And as a parent, that thanks is really heartfelt. So really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot. And thank you for having me on as well. It's been great chatting.
No problem. Thanks then.